Good afternoon. Welcome to the 2026 Budget Proposal Overview and Policy Discussion. We're officially kicking off Council's portion of budget season, and without further ado, I am happy to turn it over to our Budget Director and Assistant Directors to introduce themselves and to present their overview from their perspective on the 2026 proposed budget.
Thank you, Councilperson. I am Peter McDevitt. I'm the City Council Budget Director.
Kirsten Walmsley, City Council Assistant Budget Director.
So thanks for sitting down with us again today. And we do have a presentation for you. First, I wanted to thank all of you for again giving us this opportunity to go over the budget and give thanks to OMB and the budget analysts over there that work really hard on this for months. They are given a difficult task. And especially the analysts that work there, Sherry and Avery and Alex and Dave and Brendan and Eric, they work really hard with limited means, and they give us the best that they have to work with. And so let's dive in. Let me share my screen. Okay, so this is our 2026 budget proposal, the proposed budget from Mayor Gainey, overview on policy discussion. So today we're going to go over a quick review of what we had in 2025, and then we're going to look at the operating budget and dive a little bit into the workforce, and then we'll look at the capital budget, and then I'll give a quick recap of everything and things that we have to look forward to moving forward. So with that, 2025 was our first year that we no longer had ARPA to bail us out, to buoy the operating budget as necessary. And we were told this is going to be the first of 2 lean years. We really had the debt cliff in 2027 that was supposed to bail us out. There was $30 million more realized in the operating budget because of the bond issuances that we had to reformat how we paid those back. So this was supposed to be the first of 2 lean years. Then we also ran into, as the year went on, some issues with premium pay, which is just overtime. So for public safety and DPW, there was a lot of discussion about how much overtime we've had to pay out for all of those departments and bureaus. And we also saw some struggles providing some core services, specifically with plowing streets, and we even had an issue picking up trash at some point over the year that led to a lot of post agendas and a lot of conversations at this table. So we had some rough patches in 2025, but as we look forward in 2026, this is just a high-level overview of the 5-year forecast, and this is where I'll tell anybody to look at. This is the first place you should look in the budget, in the operating budget, to get an idea of where we're at. This gives you an overview of all of our revenues and all of our expenditures and all of our transfers out, and you can see as it shows that we're getting through with a positive operating result this year by the skin of our teeth, and positive operating results. And every year past this, we meet the minimum 10% fund balance as a percentage of our expenditures, and we are under the maximum 12% as debt service as a percentage of expenditures. So it looks good. I will note from the September budget to this budget, it looks like there's an additional $2 million more in the operating result, but you will also note that there is an additional transfer out of $2.1 million to the Transfer to Tech Modernization Fund. And that is for the ERP system that we need to replace JD Edwards with desperately. So that does account for that cost in that transfer out. But another way to look at it, some of the transfers outs are regularly scheduled payments. And according to GFOA best practices, the Government Finance Officers Association, you hear me talk about them all the time, that is the gold standard for budgeting. Shout out to our controller's office who got a GFOA award for their ACFR. Pittsburgh Water got a GFOA award for their budget because they do good jobs with budgeting. In order to get an award, we would have to show our transfers out that are regularly scheduled expenditures as operating expenditures, and we don't. So this is what it would look like if we did. And you'll see that we do have a positive operating result in 2027, but for every other year, we are spending more money. We have more money scheduled to go out in each year than we are bringing in. And I left the transfers to PAYGO and transfers to tech modernization because those are wholly dependent on what our operating result would be. If we have more money left over, then we can transfer more money to PAYGO into our capital budget. If we have less, then we will send less over. So I still left those below the line. But you'll also see that if not only do we have negative operating results, in 2030, we go below that 10% threshold of a fund balance as a percentage of expenditures. And also, like, the housing bond issuance, that there's no reason that shouldn't be considered an operating cost. Half of our Stop the Violence Trust Fund goes towards city operations. So we're transferring money out of the general fund into a trust fund to pay for city operations instead of, because if we showed it in the general fund, we couldn't balance the budget. So this is a workaround to balance the budget on paper, even though we're actually spending more money each year than we're bringing in. So then I wanted to dive a little bit more into outer year expenditures. This is just how it shows up. This isn't with the transfers out, but specifically calling out salaries, because we've talked about there's 2 lean years and then we have more room. And you can see there's that $30 million realization in 2027. Salaries for non-union employees every year after 2026 is just a 1% increase. We're also going to dive into this a little bit more, but premium pay, just the overtime for public safety and DPW, that decreases in the outer years as well. And we're not really funding it at an appropriate amount now, and it's only going down. So we're not improving as we thought we would, what we were told last year, of 2 light years. And I also wanted to highlight the operating departments. That's the money that DPW and DOMI has to go out there and do regular maintenance on all of our parks and roads and bridges and sidewalks, and the money that Parks and Rec has to go out and do the alphabet tails and trails and things like that. Next year is the high point in the 5-year plan, and that's supposed to be the second of 2 lean years. In 2027, it goes down, and it does not rebound to that high mark over the 5 years. So this is not 2 tight years. I thought it was important to highlight that. And then I have some slides here about revenues. We had a whole post agenda about this, so I'm not going to go into it too deeply. But this just shows a couple of different ways our revenues. You can see that most of it is from our taxes, whether it's earned income tax or parking tax or real estate tax. And there's a slide that breaks it down into those different types of taxes. And then overall, the main sources of revenues is that real estate earned income tax and payroll prep tax. And just to go over that a little bit more, we've talked about this in depth, but every single year in the 5-year plan, real estate tax goes down. And that's because we haven't had a reassessment in over a decade, and the common level ratio is going to make that go down. So we're also doing it inequitably because people whose value has gone up don't have to pay the taxes on that. People whose value have gone down in that time are paying more taxes than what they actually should be paying. And because of that, it's not only inequitable, but if we did these regularly, like a GFOA best practice of every 3 years, it's easy. I understand it's hard to do whenever you haven't done it in over a decade, but it would be easier to do it every 3 years than every 15. And then the changes would be much smaller and easier for people to handle, and we would see a natural boost every time that it was done. It wouldn't be a lot. It would be maxed out at 5%, but if you do it regularly, then it's a lot easier to handle. Also, again, earned income tax is outpacing real estate tax, and I want to point that out because real estate tax is much less volatile than earned income tax. If there is a downturn in the economy and people lose jobs, that means earned income tax goes down, payroll prep tax go down, parking tax is going to go down because people aren't driving into work and parking every day. So we're really depending on these things, and I have no reason to think that there's going to be a giant economic downturn, but like if we let it continue like that, and there is one, then we will be in trouble. We no longer have the facility usage fee. We were able to realize 1% instead of 3%, and that went into earned income tax. But it's also notable that there is a boost in the revenue for Medicaid costs from the state that we get from the services that EMS provides that they reimburse. So that's really helping us out a lot. And now we're going to go into the operating budget. I'm going to kick it over to Kirsten.
Operating budget expenditures. The total for 2026 is $678 million, which is about a 2% increase from our anticipated spend for this year. So for this first slide, one way to look at these expenditures is by department. So this kind of just compares each department's budget throughout our 5-year plan. The biggest increase that we're going to see here is under the Department of Finance, which, as we've discussed a lot, this is the increase in debt service payments that we will see in 2026. There's also a noticeable decrease in the Department of Human Resources and Civil Service. Through utilization of our VEBA and OPEB trust funds, the city has realized savings in retiree benefits, workers' compensation, and healthcare costs, with savings assumed in every department's healthcare allowance within their individual departmental budgets. While the Workers' Comp VEBA Trust Fund has a healthy balance of over $24 million, I think it's worth keeping an eye on the Health Insurance VEBA Trust Fund, which only has a balance of $3.3 million and may not be able to fully absorb next year's costs. I also just wanted to highlight that there are a few other departments where the 2026 budget is lower than the 2025 estimate, sometimes by a substantial amount, including in the Office of Management and Budget, the Department of Public Safety, Bureau of Administration, the Bureau of Fire, and the Bureaus of Environmental Services and Facilities and DPW. Another way to look at our expenditures is by subclass, which is kind of our subcategories of fund types. So the largest portion continues to be salaries and wages for the city's personnel and employee benefits, which includes all of the city's pension funding. These two categories alone make up over 70% of the city's overall operating budget. On the next slide, we're going to get into a little more breakdown of the city's personnel, but I also wanted to point out that the third largest category is debt service at 11.5%, which continues to be a large expenditure as the city needs to take out more debt to pay for much needed capital improvement projects. The other 14% of the budget covers all other services the departments provide, including various softwares, building maintenance costs, supplies, and our legal judgment payments. Although we're going to be focusing on a few key categories later on, I think it's important to keep in mind that many of these other operating expenses are also underfunded, with lodge judgment line and vehicle maintenance being two of particular concern. While many line items showing a decrease in the out years, this is kind of emblematic of the issues the city's budget faces beyond 2026. Yeah, so getting into the city's workforce a little more, we currently have 3,230 positions budgeted in the city's general fund, each being paid out of each department's operating budget. As you can see from this pie chart, a majority of the budgeted positions are in public safety at 59% and DPW and DOMI at 22%. The 2026 budget shows a decrease overall in 48 positions, largely from decreases to the number of employees in the mayor's office and Bureau of Police. The positions that were eliminated in police are all civilian positions. In addition to these general fund positions, there are another 297 positions allocated in various trust funds and another 20 positions that are grant funded. For 2026, the budget is currently reflecting a 3% cost of living increase for non-union employees and most union positions whose salaries are dependent on their existing collective bargaining agreements. There's currently 3 unions that have agreements expiring at the end of this year, including the Fraternal Order of Police, AFSCME 2719, and Teamsters. So these groups all currently reflect a 0% increase for 2026, as wages will remain at their 2025 rate until an agreement is signed. As in past years, funds have been set aside for negotiations to account for eventual wage increases. As we have seen an increase in the number of trust fund budget positions over the past few years, I just wanted to spend some time on some of our larger trust funds that have positions budgeted in them. The RAD trust funds continue to be the largest source of outside funding for city positions. These trust funds support the work that DPW and Parks does with our RAD parks. The parks tax has also allowed further funding to be funneled to DPW and Parks for maintenance and staffing. Another notable trust fund is Stop the Violence. I particularly wanted to call this one out because it is a little bit of a unique trust fund in that most of our other special revenue funds have outside funding that support the fund's growth, whereas Stop the Violence is fully city supported with $10 million transferred annually from the city's fund balance. This kind of goes back to Director McDevitt's earlier conversation around those below the line expenses. And I think it is also worth noting that the Stop the Violence Trust Fund currently has a balance of $13.5 million, with about another $4 million that is set aside in encumbered contracts. All right. So now, when we looked at the current iteration of the 2026 budget, two issues kind of immediately stood out. The first being premium pay. While insufficient funding for premium pay is an issue in other departments, particularly in DPW, the issue is most clearly seen in public safety. This is largely just due to the number of personnel in the bureaus of EMS, police, and fire, but I thought it was worth kind of breaking those out. So in the chart here, we have each bureau and the past 3 years of expenses or anticipated expenses under the premium pay line item. And then we have a 3-year average to compare to what is actually budgeted for 2026. There's a very serious underfunding of premium pay costs in all 3 bureaus, but especially in police and fire. The Bureau of Police, I would consider less of an issue just because they're not at their full uniformed officer allotment in the budget. But with the Bureau of Fire, they are usually fully staffed, meaning there aren't salary savings to fall back on as there is with police. So the 2026 budget also includes a decreasing budget for premium pay and fire in the out years, which I think is a very important thing to point out, even though costs typically increase every year as wages increase. I would say this leaves us with about a $5 to $6 million deficit per year, even taking into account that police has salary savings. And without managerial oversight of the situation that's often hindered by union agreements, I think this will continue to be the case. I think it is also worth noting that the budgeted numbers do not account for any increases the city will likely see in premium pay during the NFL draft. And now I will turn it back over to Director McDevitt to talk about the other big operating expense.
Yeah, and just to touch on what Kirsten was saying a little more, just fire. If you just take that one piece, we have not paid, the lowest we've paid in fire for overtime costs in the past 5 years was $19.8 million. It's only going to go up every single year. There's no reason that we could possibly think that we're going to spend less than $20 million in overtime premium pay for fire. And they have budgeted $17.5 million next year, and it goes down to $16.4 in the outer years. I didn't hear that quite, but like, I mean, there's not that much we can do because they have a very good CBA, and like to work within that's just the cost of having a fire department that's as good as ours, because we do have a very good fire department, and that's just what it costs, and this is not reflecting what it actually costs. Also, what it actually costs to run a city, you have to pay your utility bills. We were talking about.
I'll add to that political commentary when it's my turn to speak.
Oh yeah. So this is what it looks like for last year in our utility bills and what we're anticipating to pay for this year versus what is in our budget. Electricity costs are not going to go down. We had a really bad storm in April, and us and every other municipality in the county called Duquesne Light in to say, we need you to do better. And Duquesne Light said, we need to do better. And Duquesne Light's then going to go to the PUC and said, everybody wants us to do more and it's going to cost more. And they're going to raise our rates. Pittsburgh Water needs to raise their rates to pay for this is the cost of providing clean water in the city. And this year I have in there with an asterisk $13 million. We've only actually paid about $5.5 million. The majority of that is actually last year's bill that we paid this year. We reached out to Pittsburgh Water and asked like how much is our fees this year. And through October, it's about $8 million for water. And that's just Pittsburgh Water. We also have to pay, like, we usually pay between $750,000 and $1 million to Penn American Water. So we're going to be over $10 million probably in water usage. That's before they raise rates. And these are all flat numbers in the outer years too. So these numbers aren't going to go down, but in our budget, we are not increasing it. So they're unrealistic now, and they're only going to be worse in the outer years. Moving on. Capital budget. So once again, and I don't actually think this is a bad practice, focusing on existing capital projects first. We have a very large backlog. It's frustrating, but it's a lot of work to get through all of these capital projects. So focusing on what's already in the pipeline before adding anything new. There's a little over $16 million for paving, which is a decrease of over $3 million from what we saw in 2025. This is just the capital budget, but $16.7 million for fleet. In the operating budget, there's also $3 or $4 million set aside for fleet, but just to highlight what's in the capital budget. And also note that $1.1 million goes towards leases for fire trucks that we already have, so that's just money that's not going to anything new. There's also a little over $1 million in PAYGO funding for demolition. That is something that they always request way more than that, and they absolutely could spend more. They requested $9.7 million in PAYGO because it's just that much more flexible to be able to use. They also have CDBG money, but that takes a lot of work and there's a lot of red tape, and they desperately need PAYGO money every year. It's also worth noting that we're giving the URA $575,000 for personnel costs. We put that in the capital budget because that's an operating expenditure, but if we put it in the operating budget, we couldn't balance the budget. So we're paying for operating costs for one of our authorities out of our capital budget. This is a look at the 6-year capital improvement plan. One thing that's notable in this, I noted it last year, if you look at the total of PAYGO versus bond PAYGO money, just to go over this quickly, it's a transfer of operating dollars. So what we have left over after all of our expenditures and what do we have left over to put towards capital projects, it's more than a 10-to-1 ratio. Last year was about 10-to-1, but now it's more than a 10-to-1 ratio of how much debt we take out for every dollar of operating costs that we can transfer in. That's not healthy. This is a look at our capital budget over the last 10 years. You can see it peaked in 2024. The low year was 2017. We were still in Act 47 at that point, and we had a capital budget of about $75 million. In today's dollars, that equals about $100.4 million, or what this year's budget is. So we're getting the same as what we got 10 years ago through inflation. Like, we're not spending any more money than what we did whenever we were in very tight financial times. Shout out to Mike Strelick with the history of the CDBG funding. I think this was a great thing that he did, and important to include. This is money that we get from the federal government. Back in the 70s and 80s, we used to get a lot of money from them. And there was also less strings attached to it. We could be a lot more flexible. But now, not only do we get less money, but with inflation, it's worth way less. And also, the things that we can use it on are a lot tighter. Like, we can't be as generous in places that we might want to be. So it's really less money that we could spend in less places. So this is an overview of the different funding sources just for 2026 in the capital budget. Again, this is pretty much the exact same slide I had last year, but it's important to point out that bond issuance for $51 million, it makes up about half of our capital improvement plan. There's going to be a separate legislation that happens after the end of this year. So approving this capital budget, you're essentially approving us to take out a bond, but that we still have to go through that process. And we'll see our bond counsel come into town and explain all of it. But just as a reminder, you're going to have to approve this again in January and February. That PAYGO transfer is an operating budget transfer over CDBG, has to be spent within HUD guidelines, and that other categories made up of outside funding sources. Usually it's the biggest one is TIP projects that comes from federal highway money, that at this point we're still receiving that from the federal government, but who knows what the future holds. This is also straight out of the capital budget. This breaks it up by functional area. I wanted to point out specifically facility improvements because we're spending about $30 million on facility improvements by functional area, but actually $9.7 million is for park reconstruction. And of the other about $20 million for actual facilities, 17.5 of that is going to 3 specific projects. So it's not spread, it's $30 million that is not spread very widely. This is a project of per district spending and capital budget. As per usual, citywide projects get the vast majority of the funding. Shout out to District 8, who doesn't show up in here at all. And then I showed this a few years ago, but to call it out, this is what it looks like without the TIP money, because those are generally our more expensive projects. It doesn't actually look that different because we shifted around tip money a lot in the last couple of years. So we were spending it sooner than this year. So a review of the 2026 operating capital budget. It does not follow GFOA best practices by balancing our expenditures versus our revenues. And really, we have a revenue issue. We have to have those transfers out because our revenues are so short that even if we can pay for them, we can't show them as a general fund expense because we don't have enough revenue. We're also going to see issues with premium pay and utilities costs. Unless if you start closing down buildings and pools and spray parks, those utility costs, we are going to have to pay them. And then one thing that is not accounted for at all in this is a potential refund for jock taxes that we had been collecting. That could be anywhere between $5 and $10 million. I could not give you an accurate estimate, but I don't think it'd be outlandish to say somewhere around there. There's a very strong dependence on trust funds in this budget. Kirsten talked about it a little bit, but if you look at that 5-year forecast, you can see there's a big drop in workers' comp and health benefits, and that's because we're depending on trust funds that usually are there to supplement, to kind of take the edge off of what those cost. But we're draining those down big time, and it's not a sustainable thing to do. And then we had talked about this earlier. This is not just 2 lean years. Those outer years are, you're really pushing it on whether or not they're realistic, specifically with the premium pay and utilities. That's why we called them out. So moving forward, it's going to be a tall task to come up with a realistic 5-year plan. We are required to law to have a 5-year forecast that meets legal requirements. And if we're not taking it seriously, we might as well not have it. I understand the idea of taking this year by year, but if we just keep kicking the can down the road, it's going to be really, really hard to deal with it whenever it comes time to deal with it. So the sooner you face the hard choices to make a realistic 5-year plan that would make it really easy on you in the outer years, it's going to be difficult to just fund core services there, having rec centers open, having pools open, having spray parks open, being able to plow streets, pick up garbage every day. We already saw the struggles with it this year. In this budget, I have no reason to think that it's going to get better. And you can't do that if you don't increase revenue or start cutting core services. And that's it. So.
Thank you, Directors McDevitt in Walmsley, and we will open it up to council member questions. I will just say that this is, I don't have too many questions because this is the culmination of a lot of the discussions that we have been having as a joint financial task force, which has included council budget office, OMB, finance, controller's office, mayor's office. So with a lot of the discussions that we're going to have throughout this budget process we've been having all year through the joint financial task force. So I would be happy to open it up to members for questions. Councilmember Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for having an overview. I just have some, initial questions. I might have some after some others ask some questions as well. But so the overall tone that I get is that there are some numbers that are in here that are unrealistic. So like just picking out some, like the utilities and overtime pay based on historical numbers and some other numbers we know that will, for instance, like water rates and everything. But and then the estimated bill at the end of this year, right? Or next year. I'm sorry, the estimated bill at the end of next year. So, I mean, just to be frank, how can those numbers make it in here? Like, I thought there was some protections, in terms of for projected numbers to be accurate. Like, I remember meeting with the director of finance, and maybe you were in a meeting. It was like a couple of years ago, and I was trying to understand like how we get to these projected numbers. So how is it even possible to submit, this budget with numbers that, from your analysis, are incorrect?
So we have the revenue forecasting, which brings in the controller's office and city council budget office. That we all sit down and we have to agree on those. But as far as the spending plan, it's the mayor presents his spending plan to city council, and this is exactly it. This is the vetting process of is this, and we did sit down last year and ask them hard questions, especially about premium pay of, do you think this is realistic? And they had answers about new CBA agreements and there's savings to be had. And this year you heard there's whether or not it's within the salaries line, there's always savings somewhere in the budget. But as you can see, we're projected to have $163,000 left over at the end of this year. So there's really not that much savings.
So basically, with those projected numbers, it's solely up to the administration the mayor and the administration
and council. Like, this is the time that this is exactly why we're doing this. We're vetting these numbers, and why I'm telling you that.
Right, but we haven't in the past changed. I mean, since I've been here, I haven't seen us go in there and
I don't know.
Change the number of projected overtime.
Yeah.
Right? We haven't done that.
No.
Since I've been here.
No. Not that I can recall. We also haven't been in this situation before. We've had ARPA to bail us out over the past number of years.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, to get there, what's your recommendations? Like, to get to some realistic, like, should we? If councils, if there's members of council that are interested in putting together numbers that are like we agree on that are good projections, do you view that as like a new document that we have, like, you put in green and what that would look like? I don't know. New additions.
I mean,
or we would all come with our hypotheticals. Sorry to talk over you.
No, you're the one that gets to talk over me. It's not going to be an easy task. This is not a budget where you can take the glasses off and pull out the ponytail and all of a sudden you have a prom queen. This is a much bigger task. Sorry.
So last year I was sitting on the side of the table, and I think a lot of my other colleagues asked good questions on terms of like projecting overtime pay, and I think I was on the side of like, okay, that sounds believable.
Yeah.
Not from you, but from the
from them. Yeah.
And so looking at what happened last year, I'm definitely taking a different look at this, and I'll take any recommendations on how to go with our own projections so we can have a
over the next few weeks, whenever we sit down with departments, and we'll have those conversations and get an idea from them of like what are it, because this is not all that they're asking for. They know that the departments know that they need more, and this is just what was available to give them without doing anything to increase revenue or make big cuts to core services.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Councilwoman Cale Smith.
Thank you. Thank you for the work you both did on this. But I actually have so much to say because I feel like Dan Friesen has been saying since he was here that we had better pay attention, that there was a lot of concerning things happening in the budget. Last year, nobody seemed to think that they thought he was an alarmist and overreacting. And here, now everything he has said is coming to fruition, and we're all sitting here now blaming the administration when we allowed it to happen, and for all these years. And so we're part of the problem, not part of the, we need to be part of this. We need to be the solution, and I think we can be if we stick together. But I'm frustrated that we're just now acting shocked about these numbers, and we also didn't even find out last year about the budget being concerning until 13 hours before from the controller's office. 13 hours before. I'm not asking for your response. It was 13 hours before I have the email. And so that was concerning. But I do want to say, you have consistently said to me that we need to worry about some of the grant funding and some of the things we're doing. It shouldn't be in the grant-making business, and we should be working towards something better to help people, something more sustainable, something not public dollars, to help the groups do the things. Not that we don't value what they do, but we also value servicing them with ambulances. We also value making sure their weeds are cut, the roads are paved, and making sure that the kids and communities are safe. So we value all those things too, and those are things we get tax money for. And so the other things are things that we should be trying to work with other foundations or other private dollars that to help sustain the programs that we also value. But the things we're responsible for are the things we should be focusing on. So if you could draft your own budget, do you have an idea of where you would cut or where you would do something different? Because what if we don't make payroll?
The issue isn't that we're not quite at the point where we're not going to be able to meet payroll.
Do you know that for sure? Do you know that for sure?
This year, yes.
Because I want to be honest.
Because of the fund
what
balance.
frustrates me is I feel like council pays so many people to advise us, to help us, to guide us, and the public also to make sure there's checks and balances. And we rely on all of you and your expertise to help us. So we shouldn't be surprised by numbers that are coming up. We shouldn't be shocked by some of these things. We need people to tell us the truth. And I know it's difficult because you're in a political position, even though you're not political. You know what I mean? And I know that. And I know you have a good heart, and I know you want to see the city do well. But for me, it's frustrating because I want to know the reality of what we should do, what you think we should do from your expert opinion.
Yeah.
That's what I want to know.
I mean, I will say with the overtime stuff, that was the first thing Kirsten flagged in the September budget last year, and it was something that Councilperson Strasburger called out in her letter. So we tried to flag this stuff early.
When were those? September, and when was Councilwoman's letter?
Last year.
It was sometime in October.
October. Okay.
And like it's not new to me. Julia can tell you the headline in the Trib 2 years ago after I gave this presentation was concerning about like in the outer years we're going to need to do something to increase revenue. So
And I do want to say I appreciate that the controller sent something out earlier this year.
Yeah.
Last year was her first year, so I'm going to say that.
Yeah.
So.
We put ourselves in a position coming out of Act 47 that there's a lot of safeguards in place, that 10% percentage as a reserve fund balance. That's there to make sure that we can meet payroll. So if we go over budget, it just pulls out of that on payroll. So we're going to be able to meet payroll. The issue is like everything else.
Yeah, you say we're able to meet payroll. My concern is we're getting ready to hire a chief. What if that chief wants more funding than what we have budgeted?
I guarantee you, he's going to want more, he or she is going to want more funding. Every department that comes to this table is going to tell you that
And
they
is
need more
council
funding.
going, so then that's up to council to hold the
It-
line and say we're
absolutely,
not
yeah.
paying more
Yeah.
for any chief or for any other position this year. Okay. Okay. So that's, I want to know some of those things. And I just want to know, I mean, does that, if we miss payroll, does that, propel us to Act 47, or is that
Yeah.
another thing?
It absolutely would.
Okay. So it's up to this council to make sure that we're making tough decisions, whether we like them or not, whether the new administration likes them or not, whether the old administration likes them or not. It's for what's best for the city of Pittsburgh and for our residents, period.
And me and Kirsten are here to help you with that.
Thank you. Thank you. I intend on voting that way as I have for the past 2 years. Thank you. Or few years. Sorry.
Thank you. Councilwoman Warwick.
Yeah, thank you. So I just wanted to get some, just for my own, just some kind of rough numbers, just to kind of get sort of high level. So, and correct me if these are wrong, please. So demo, based on what PLI asked for versus what they got, we are 9 million short.
They asked for 9.7 when they got a little over, and that's just PAYGO. They got a little over 2 million in CDBG dollars, I think, but they got a little over $1 million in PAYGO, even though they asked for 9.7.
So they're, let's say 8 million
Yeah.
short. I mean, like, if they could do all the demos they wanted to do, they are 8 million short.
Yeah.
Okay. For overtime, and forgive me, but I'm not looking at the outer years, I'm just looking at next
Yeah.
year. So for overtime, if we're looking at historical and this year, we're like 10 million short?
I would say at least, yeah.
10 million short, okay.
And when we only did the public safety
Oh, that was just on
bureaus,
public safety, okay.
with things like DPW, they have a little bit more leeway in management to just not approve it. The CBAs and fire and EMS and police are much
Got it.
stronger than that, and you need to have fully staffed fire bureau departments at all times.
Got it.
Whereas DPW can say, we're not going to do that project this weekend. We're not going to approve that overtime. It's just going to take longer to do stuff.
Got it, okay. Utilities, 5 million short?
That one, I mean, there should be another caveat with water, because there is some true up costs that happen every single year. I have no idea what that would look like, but I can tell you that it's between $3 and $5 million probably that we're short.
Okay. And then this, now I know this is not in your, but we've heard a lot about fleet, and we've heard a lot about fleet. The ELA has the number at 20, about 20 million if we did every year
Yeah.
and did everything they could. But
Yeah.
just for as sort of, let's say 10 million
Yeah.
to give them half of what they think. So that would be like a total of 20, 30, 35 million. And I won't say short, but the fleet, right? The fleet in the demo isn't short, but it is something that we need to do, right? Yeah, I mean, obviously everyone, I had a hearing on revenue increases, right? And just a reminder that a 10% millage increase would yield roughly 17 million. It's just a number to have, right? And that we haven't had a revenue increase in 11 years.
The last time we did anything.
I'm sorry, a property, a millage
Yeah.
increase in 11 years.
Yeah.
Okay. I just will say, and this is something I will say over and over and over again as we go through this budget hearing. Like, I feel like the path forward to growing Pittsburgh, to making, this is such a great city to live. I mean, if you compare it to other cities, and I know it's hard, you live in a city, you kind of, you kind of gripe about but compared to other mid-sized cities, big cities, like, it is so safe. Our neighborhoods, for the most part, right, are so safe for our kids to come and go. We have great rec center programming. We have good programming for our seniors. Our parks are beautiful. Our playgrounds are beautiful. Our, just amenities, which is, I understand that's not city, right? But like just being able to go to the museums and like the this and that, like it is a really incredible city. We have beautiful bike paths on the trail, like all these things make Pittsburgh a place where people want to live, or people want to come live, people want to visit, and it makes it a really nice place for people living here, for most. Not and we also have things that we need to improve. We have neighborhoods that have been neglected for decades, where you really see that disparity, right, between like the, at any rate. And I think that the path forward is to make sure that we can keep providing all the great things that we do so well, and that we can improve on the things that we aren't doing so well, which is like snow removal, litter, demoing houses, and I think, or renovating them, land bank, right, like, and that costs money. And I am going to ask at all the budget hearings, and I think we should all ask, like, where can you save, to every director, like, where were you over budget? Where where do you see savings in your own budget, or improvements, process improvements you can make? So I hope that the directors are prepared to answer that for their departments. But another thing too, and again, just to go back to that, the post agenda that we just had, is that for the average, for an average Pittsburgher who makes $72,000 a year and has a $100,000 valued property, they pay about $130 a month in city taxes. I know it doesn't include all the rest, school and county and all of that, but $130 a month. That feels like, I know nobody likes to, but that feels like a bar. When I think about what I get for $130 today, in today's dollars, right? What I get just at the grocery store or like whatever, $130 a month for all the parks, like the garbage pickup, right? Alone, right? Like all the things that we do get here in Pittsburgh. I just think that that's important for us to remember. I am very uncomfortable with the idea of cutting things. I will say that going in. So anyway, I'll leave it. Thank you. This is helpful, and we'll keep having these conversations going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Gross.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So yeah, as I have been sitting here a long time, for many years now, and when I first got here, we couldn't actually change the budget more than 3%.
Yeah.
So that's what Act 47 meant, right? If when we got these in November, if we made more than 3% change, it went back to a state committee of Act 47, and then there was the other oversight committee, and so there were two oversight committees for a while. But that's not true now. And so that's why I think the public needs to be prepared that we're going to have robust debate. And so while it's important that we all paid attention to the preliminary budget, and it's important that we all pay attention to this mayor's proposal, there probably should be the word proposal really big, because we don't need to do this at all. Like we could just, where's the garbage can if we want to. We don't have a lot of time between right now with this in hand and the end of December to come up with like a totally different whole concept. But yes, this is the process, and this is both the responsibility, the power, and the responsibility here. This is now council's budget. So if we want to eliminate an entire city department, that's how we do it. I always say, we could create a whole new city department. The mayor doesn't have to hire any of those people or spend any of that money, technically, right? And so that's our division of powers. So, we appreciate all of the departments, and we appreciate you all coming here to kind of give us this. It's like our first look today. And then as we go through all these budget hearings, we will be asking the directors, where they can cut, but we will also be listening for, what if we just don't give them what they asked for? It's our responsibility to say, you know what? You want A, B, and C, but we decided only B is important this year. Also when I got here, I think the entire capital budget was $20 million.
I believe
We
that.
hadn't borrowed in 12 years. It
Yeah.
went up to 15, and then there had been no bond in that many years. By the time we finally started borrowing, like 2018 maybe.
I know that I think 2014 they took one out that covered 2014 and 2015 that was maybe like $50 million total, but
We'll have to look back at that.
yeah.
So those playgrounds hadn't been fixed in 50 years. That street hadn't been paved in 50 years. And if it had been, lots of streets hadn't really been paved. They'd been painted with asphalt
Yeah.
on a very, very thin layer. And so, those are big chunks. We didn't pay anything for water.
Yeah.
Our water bill, in 2014 was $0. And in 2015. So there are definitely a lot of changes. I think the overtime was probably about the same, honestly. That's just a nut no one can crack. For 12 straight years, I think it's probably been about the same proportion of payroll to overtime, it seems like, unfortunately. So, especially in public safety. So, yes, this is going to be a season of us having to say no to some things. And so then the debate will be, which things are we saying no to? So it's not going to be fun, but it's our responsibility to be real. And if there are discussions on revenue, I think the councilwoman for her post agenda last week, I liked the idea that there's a possibility that we could tax some kinds of basically unearned income, so meaning you've gotten income from something that isn't your job paycheck. That if it seems like it's a legal thing to do, that we could make some changes there or try to that would bring in some new revenue that wouldn't be hurting any households. From what I heard last week, it could be structured in a way that it would be households that wouldn't be hurt by paying it. So, I just wanted to give that a high-level thing. I think one of the things I'm going to be asking for, if we don't have it readily available I can understand why it would just be council members and not the general public, but I don't know if you all have it, I'm going to ask for the demolition list. Right? I know, this seems to be one of those things that it's not a state secret. There's not like we need a security level clearance here. FYI, just a reminder, read the home rule charter. If council members ask a department, you have to give it to us. So FYI, just again, heads up to all the directors before they come in for their budget hearings. If a council member asks for it, the way I asked for, by the way, the map of that the lawyers between PwC and the city has supposedly worked on for over a year without talking to council members, their map of where the laterals are, not the laterals, but the mains are for both the water and sewer system, and I wasn't given it. I still don't have it, right? I was afforded the opportunity to look at it on somebody's screen, which is not what I asked for. So I'm still waiting for that one. I'll nag them about that. So because we need the information, because we're gonna have to make choices. And so for us to all understand the same information, we need to actually see the same information, or it's, we end up talking past each other or talking in circles. So that's just my initial things. Thoughts?
I mean, I think you made an important point that I didn't want anybody to gloss over, and it actually would have been a much better answer to Councilman Wilson's questions of Act 47 was what would prevent a budget like this being put forward to council, because the state, like you said, there was 2 levels of oversight from the state that had to check not just next year's spending, but the outer years. So that really was the check and balance to make sure that it was realistic before it got to council. And
so again, just to say it in even more detail, when we were under state oversight, this budget didn't actually come from the mayor's office.
Yeah.
Their proposal went to the Act 47 committee. And the Act 47 committee basically sent it to council.
Yeah.
And the notion that it was, entirely written by some mayor's office is not true. This truly is just a budget proposal. Again, read the Home Rule Charter. The mayor cannot enact a budget in the city of Pittsburgh. The mayor, it's not the mayor's budget. It's city council's budget. They administrate, and we budget. So, all right, thank you. That's all.
Thank you. Councilperson Charlin.
Yeah, thank you. We'll try to be brief because I know we're going to know a lot of this during the conversation with different departments, the things that are of interest here. One thing, I wish Councilman Wilson was still here to hear this. When I think
I believe
it was
he's listening online. He said
is
he
he?
would be. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. The concept of these unrealistic expenses in the future. So my actually first piece of legislation was about having the controller certify the 5-year revenue projections. And if you recall, my original draft of that included the 5-year, have them certify 5-year expenses.
Yep.
Realizing after I put that in there that was a bad idea because that would make the controller the only budgeting agency in the city. I took that out. But one thing that I think maybe would be worth considering is figuring out what are the line items where we don't want to have the controller certify, what, will the city have, like anti-litter inspectors, or are we going to have social workers? We don't have them certify that. But maybe it is worthwhile to consider have them like certify what we think the utility bills are going to be, or what we think we're going to spend on fuel, or some things that I guess I'm probably thinking more of like the utilities that we pay for, getting the controller's office to sign off on our utility projections reasonable in the 5-year plan instead of just having them be flat. And I don't know, it would probably be, this is not the time of year for us to do this, but maybe some other time of the year where we can go through and say like this line item, this line item, this line item. These are things we should have council discretion on. These are things that are kind of like fixed cost or a utility that we might want to spend. Maybe that's something worth considering in future years here.
Maybe. I mean, I would say that at least for me personally, the controller's office has been really great to work with. They have the same concerns. They want to make sure that the city is funded at the level that it needs to be funded at to run properly. And I think we should probably pay a little bit more attention to the ACFR because any budget professional will tell you that you shouldn't base your budget off of last year's budget. You should base it off of what was spent. And as the city's auditor, they're going to tell you they can tell you line by line whenever they're going through that act for what was actually spent. And that's a great opportunity to look at, are those numbers realistic? Like, and to use those judgments of like, there's no reason to believe electricity costs are going to go down if we have the same number of facilities open.
Yeah.
So they are an excellent resource.
Yeah. I mean, and honestly, when we look through the budget, the most useful line is not what we budgeted last year, but what our costs are this year. What we spent this year. That again, that's what makes the overtime so glaring when we look at it that way. I just think that might be an interesting exercise if we could go through and, like I said, maybe next year we can start looking through like what are the things that we should be looking at in a 5-year plan and projecting. We shouldn't have the controller sign off on how much we're going to pave next year because that's a number that can change. But I don't know. I would like to go through that. Sorry. So Anthony,
He knows what he's doing.
yeah. No, you're fine. The demolition. So this has been something since I've been a staffer here. I've been always wanting to see us move more demolition into PAGO. We've about $3 million in CDBG this year. And I believe it's like, what'd you say, 1.5 in PAGO?
It's like Just over $1 million.
Yeah.
1,092,000.
When we, the way that CDBG funding comes in and knowing that demolitions don't really happen throughout the summer, the excavating companies that do these demolitions have more profitable work at that time of year. PAYGO allows us to be much more nimble, and demolition, land bank, those are the two top priorities in my district of things that we need to be doing. And it just always seems to be something that falls on the wayside. Again, I just want us to move as much to PAYGO as possible there. The other thing I want to mention, this water bill situation, shoring up our water bill this year. Can you explain what you mean by that?
So in the co-op, there's some shared costs. I honestly don't know I can't give you the details, but it is something that we go through. This is what we spent on projects that maybe you should have been taking the lead on, and vice versa. So we shore up some of the cost sharing in that, and usually we end up paying less than what we've incurred in our water bills for them. But again, we didn't used to pay for water, and now we do at full rates, and their rates are only going to go up.
Yeah.
So
I think for me, there's something that I remember last year talking about utility fees and how those are going to be a real problem in between the preliminary and mayor's budget, that was the real concern from OMB. This year, the water bill seems like a new crisis that I don't think I fully had on my radar.
Yeah, we had been trying to like I said earlier, we've paid about $5.5 million, I think, in water bills, but almost all of that is last year. So we're working we're a year behind, and we've been working to try and catch up so that we're actually paying our bills in real time, which I'm sure when Pittsburgh Water comes here, they will tell you that they would prefer that we are keeping up to date on our water bills. But we haven't gotten there yet because we literally can't afford to pay our water bill this year. It's not that DPW is just ignoring it; it's they do not have the money to pay it.
Yeah, that's not good.
Nope.
So I think I always call it the budget math magic that the transfers is always something I'm aware of this is really phony the way that we do it. The other trick that we always use in the budget is saying that the out years we're not going to pave streets.
Yeah.
There's things that you can look for that you see all the time there. But it's unfair. I guess it's unfair to us as council to have to be able to solve for these budget math magic problems, which, it now is going to end up with us having to shoulder the weight of, any of the bad options. I don't think any of us want to talk about them of cutting services or laying people off or raising taxes. It's now council's problem because we were not given a budget that took this process seriously. So it's a real shame, but that's our job to fix over the next 2 months or so. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Madam Chair. Okay. So, Peter, just a couple.
Hope you enjoyed the presentation.
It was beautiful. I was watching intently backstage there, and I just couldn't break myself from the TV. I didn't want to miss any of it in order to come out here. So I waited for a break, and I ran out here as fast as I could, so I couldn't miss any of this intriguing conversation. But just in general, okay, where do you see the biggest pitfall in this budget for next year? Obviously, the overtime cost. Is that where you see the largest miscalculation?
That fire overtime is the thing that I've pointed to consistently throughout this, because in the outer years we have in that last year of the budget, if we would spend, it's around $500,000 more over the next 5 years, then we would have a budget that doesn't meet the requirements with the fund balance percentage. We're going to pay probably $3 million more next year than what they have budgeted, and $5 or $6 million every year after that, just in fire premium pay.
Just in fire.
So if you would just take that alone.
So you add up public safety in general, we're talking $15 million probably a year that we're going to be.
Yeah,
saving.
that's
Yeah,
not. That's
yeah,
not.
it's not
I mean,
right.
with that and utilities, especially if you combine those, we're $15 million a year off of what's realistic.
What do you think we're going to come up short this year? We're already behind.
Oh, I mean, we're going to be
Million,
like.
at least a million.
I think the projection for fire premium pay is like $24 million. Yeah, and they were budgeted at 16 million or something like 17 million maybe.
And that's
So-
money we have to come up with. That's not money we could defer.
No,
That's not
yeah.
money we could say, oh, we'll pay you next year, or put us on a payment plan. We need to come up with that money.
It just comes out of the reserve fund
Because
balance.
I remember last year, Jen Olzinger came to the table a couple of times, and we were like, we had to pay $500,000 in overtime premium fees. And
Yeah.
we had to pay it. We have to pay it right
Yeah.
out of our.
And there are generally savings. Some places they come in under budget. A lot of times what they'll do is just not hire people whenever a position becomes vacant. So that's savings that they're realizing there in salaries and benefits that we don't have to pay out. But then you just have less employees doing less work. And we've already seen a couple. We worked with you to move money from the debt service interest fee because
Thank you. Yes.
credit to the finance department and OMB that they were able to get bonds at a better rate than was anticipated. But we have to. We're not using that on debt service, but we're using it to bail out the premium pay and utilities.
I hope we can come up with some creative, different ways to bolster our fleet. But obviously, the out years at $3 million a year, we are, as you know, you're on the Equipment Leasing Authority Board with me, which I'm going to start attending again and see how bad and
Very
ugly
excited.
it is. But it's really bad. I mean,
Yeah.
so what's more bigger problem? The fleet as to what we budgeted there, or the lack of budgeting for premium costs for overtime?
Well, the premium pay, we're not gonna meet what we put in. We're gonna go over that, and then it'll just get paid out of the reserve fund balance. So we'll still pay all those people for all the hours that they work. But for the fleet, they might not have a fire truck to drive around, or an ambulance, or a snow plow.
Well, again, you're right. I know. Obviously, the projections that we have just don't work. I'm hoping we come up with like some creative ways working with the nonprofits, as you hear, Corey O'Connor talk about, which is, to me, makes complete sense. We're delivering their patients. Their patients are paying their bills. We are footing the bill to deliver them. It just makes sense. So I hope we could come up with some creative ways. I don't think we'll find the monies to bolster that fleet to $20 million a year like we need to. But, okay. I mean, I can go on and on. I know there's lots of problems with this budget. I can't vote for it at this point. It's unrealistic. I don't even know where we go from here as to how we fill these gaps and holes. But I guess we'll figure that out as we go. So, thanks for the work you do, though.
Yeah.
Thanks, Madam Chair.
Yeah. Anything further? Council President, do you have any comments? No. Okay. Thank you. So, I mean, just a couple of things I heard. One, this is sort of, I think, getting at what Councilperson Charlin was discussing. But this idea, which it's helpful to articulate. It's helpful to see, maybe even as a pie chart, just how much of the budget is untouchable to us, because in part of CBAs that council has no say in. So we're really able only to impact a certain portion of the budget at all. And if that is something that even this year you could be produced for us, I know we could also go on, the mayor's sort of budgeting tool. You can sometimes see that as you go through that exercise, but that's sometimes helpful for us just to communicate to the public. There are fixed costs. Utilities are another example. CBA agreements are another example. So, just one thing. To the water bill. I think everyone knows this, but 5 years ago we agreed upon sort of it's almost like the final transition from it being a department integral to the city to a separate utility with a stepped up payment each year. So, paying more and more and more and more until, the asset transfer and the co-op agreement is finalized. But that accounts, in addition to, rate increases, like that accounts for some of the stepped up kind of transition from it being just a flat amount that we pay them every year to actually charging us for the water usage like any utility would. I agree that we should be requesting and hearing back from departments when we ask them for data or information. I think the demolition list is a great idea to get, as Councilwoman Gross brought up. One other item that I wanted to note here was, and thank you to our budget team for bringing this up today again, was a request into the law department as to what the definition of an expenditure is. Because is a transfer out an expenditure? Should we be counting that as an expenditure? And so wanted to note that we should be hearing back from our lawyers as to what that should be and how we should be properly budgeting in the future. And then just this idea that creating a budget is complicated, and although we have two very competent budget analysts and directors in the form of our budget office, even in the short amount of time between, yes, it's a short amount of time and a lot of work for us to do the work here. I'm not exactly convinced that it should be our job to have to do all the work. That we can point out what we would like to see fixed. We could point out what the opportunities are, and then lean on those who are our finance and OMB staff as well to help us with that. Because two people, I don't think, should be expected to do plus council members should be expected to do the job of a whole financial and budget office. So we should come up with solutions. We should see what the ideal solution is. We should make proposals. We should ask good questions. But I'm not exactly convinced that it should be up to us to do the hard and the laborious work of creating our own budget. I hope that we can rely on our experts in the offices that serve all of the city, including us in OMB and finance. That's all I have to say for now. Council President and then Councilwoman Cale Smith.
Just real quick, can you get us a list of all the current posted positions? In the budget that was sent over, they eliminated positions that had been long-standing and unfilled. Yeah. But there are also positions that are posted that probably have not been filled either. Can we get a list of those?
Yeah, we usually work with OMB around this time of year to get an idea of like what vacant positions have been posted, what are still unposted, what they plan on doing with them. That was actually something that. Sorry, I don't. Go ahead. In the GFOA conference, that was something that me and Kirsten both noted this year in DC, which, like, as the people that set the budget, I would very much encourage you guys to go to any kind of GFOA training because it's very helpful and very exciting. But, like, that's best practices that a lot of other municipalities have adopted, that if you have a position that's been open for 180 days and you haven't filled it, do you really need it? So they've realized budget savings by just taking it out of the budget.
Yeah. So, agreed. So if you can get that to us, I think that'd be helpful for us. And then there was one other thing I had to ask you. Oh, how much was set aside for the CBAs?
Hang on. I want to say it's either 3.75 or 2.75. It's as usual. It's in.
It's where they transfer that line item to the finance department to hold it there.
They usually put it in human resources in the salaries line as an allowance, and it is $2.75 million.
That'll barely cover fire.
Police, yes.
Sorry.
And there's also Teamsters and ASME 2719.
All right. So we'll have to look at that as well.
Yeah.
Because that will.
I mean, who knows what
right, who knows,
but yeah.
It'll be more than that. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Councilwoman Cale Smith.
Thank you. I just want to say that I hear what you're saying, that it's a lot of work, but the OMB office works for the administration, so not for the city as a whole. I mean, although maybe in theory they do, but in reality, they work with the administration. And so I think if you need help with working with a budget, Council President Lavelle had made a suggestion once that we create a law and budget office, or budget and law, I think you said. I can't remember, but something similar to that. I think we put somebody into place to help you do the things that we need you to do. and we maybe look at some of our staffing and what we are doing here. This is our core function, and this is what we're elected to do. So I don't want to. I understand the need for help. I understand what the councilwoman's saying. I'm just saying, for me, I would rather us not give our power and our control and the things we're elected to do to anybody, and to trust anybody else with that other than our people.
Yeah.
That's all. So maybe it's a conversation we should have about what we need to do in the budget for the following years and what we should have in place, because that is our core function, really. So that's it for me. I just want to make sure that we have a conversation about it. And I don't know what you were thinking about when you had suggested, it was a while back. But yeah. Yeah, I can't remember what it was, but it might be something worth revisiting. It might be something that, we help, because then it would mirror the Law and Finance Committee too. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything further? So let's see. I believe this counts as our first budget hearing. So we will recess. We'll have a motion to recess, and we will continue to recess until the end of the budget season.
Motion to recess.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are in recess.